Transferencia de tecnología. Estrategias clave para el desarrollo regional en países miembros de ASIPI. Fabrizio Modica. Grupo de Trabajo, Rol de las Universidades para el Desarrollo de la PI, Paraguay. Jean-Carlo Costa. Grupo de Trabajo, Rol de las Universidades para el Desarrollo de la PI, Perú. Moderadora, Giselle Reuben, ASIPI, Costa Rica.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes. Para mí es un honor poder moderar el panel del día de hoy, que tiene como objetivo presentar los resultados del estudio regional sobre transferencia de tecnología. Este estudio lo realizó el Grupo de Trabajo, Rol de las Universidades para el Desarrollo de la Propiedad Intelectual, liderado por Fabrizio Modica.
Led by Fabrizio Modica and Antonio Martinez. The idea is that through a series of questions, we're going to be able to explore the main findings, challenges, and recommendations.
Quería empezar con vos, Fabrizio. ¿Cuál fue la
Fabrizio, what was the motivation to conduct this study, and why does it result so relevant for the region and for ASIPI? Thank you, Giselle. Before starting, I'd like to ask if you can please put up my presentation. Thank you. So this is a very important question, and last year in the work group, when we were reviewing what subject matter we could come up with, and why not speak about technology transfer in our countries, a very unknown subject matter, and in ASIPI, a lot of our agents do intellectual property, and they not only have the opportunity to have this contact to be able to discuss these issues for technology transfer. So if I recall, technology transfer universities, and obviously we wanted to have a sort of photography or landscape in the region, what technology transfer looks like, what are the countries that exist with stronger regulations, other countries that have, what countries don't have anything on technology transfer and are only based in their laws for intellectual property. So just wanted to have that comparative study. And we did a study over the region. We saw pages, international institutions, and like ASIPI as a leader in the region, we should create that study and find out. And as lawyers who do intellectual property, we have to go beyond as far as technology transfer and how this, obviously by creating this comparative regional study, how we can provide a photography of the region and see as a CP what we can suggest, what can we improve, and how can we improve it. So this is how the interest came about in a work group, and the best way is to work it through a questionnaire. And that is basically what we did, and then I'm going to refer more to the subject. Thank you. Jean-Carlo, you wanted to mention anything? Yes. I remember that when we began to do this job for, to raise information, the question was exactly where are we? And something very important was know exactly what were the objectives or what were the main objectives for ASIPI to be a referent for intellectual property. See the aspect of ASIPI as a leader, that people that can articulate, that can generate positive things in the region with intellectual property based on technology transfer. And so to do this, to be able to get this started, an ambitious plan of our association is we can't start from zero. And so that questionnaire that was developed, the intent was to raise the information and to have a clearer panorama and to understand from our neighboring country learn what was the status and the protection and the tools that could exist for when we speak about technology transfer. I think that this is a great start. This is a great subject matter, and just as I was promoting, this is going to be technology is going to be an important tool and something that we are already experiencing, and as a region, we can't stay behind. Fabrizio, what methodology was used and how many countries participated effectively? This is a subject that I see a lot, and initially some tended to do a structured questionnaire, others wanted to do something simpler, something with 4 or 5 questions, and we said no, it's going to be in depth, and so we structured 7, 8 axis basis, and that was, of course, methodological issue and regulatory issue, public policies, proposals, institutions, keys, catalyzers. We pretty much saw, our questionnaire has 10 pages, and so we saw here another one of the representatives of ASIPI. In the case of the work group, we saw one representative per country, and then we sent the national delegates a super questionnaire. Some even complained that this was a mini thesis that they had to fill out. And so we began this in January, and then we went to mid-April, and some delegates, some group representatives did answer that faster. Others took their time, but ultimately this was the idea. We had a series of questions that allowed us to understand both the regulatory framework, transfer technology, incentives, economic incentives, investment law, international treaties, meaning this was something that was incredibly complex. And once we received these questionnaires, then, we did, a data validation, and we attended to regulatory systems. In other cases, we also had some interviews. So, we were able to have a global vision, general vision on the issue, and then maybe try and articulate a little bit and or coordinate and answer more as a summary on the last results that we were able to find. Giancarlo, what were the main findings, general findings that could be understood from a regional focus? Something that we could definitely mention is the diversity or the different way of each country and how to regulate this. I believe that there is a bit of a complicated hard work, because there's countries that have very complex detailed regulations. Some countries have a lot of regulation doesn't communicate amongst itself. Regulations that are isolated, and countries that, unfortunately, I think don't have any knowledge of the technology transfer. And so I think that this data collection gives us a very fair, honest map with information that is going to allow to create proposals, which is basically the end of this commission, and we're working on that. But not everything is bad. It also gives us the opportunity to verify, validate that as a CP, we have a large, great opportunity. CVC is that association that can articulate the public sector with private sector, and I think that is the key of this development, and also evidence that universities, in our opinion, Fabrizio, I hope I'm not wrong, but could be the main stakeholder. And so going to universities which are committed to this, and I think we can definitely generate not only in the countries that are members for ASIPI and have an impact in their countries, but also to be able to make sure that the states themselves can generate public policies completely based in technology transfer. We're going to see cases and examples that we can discuss once we present the book of countries that use this particular structure for universities and the impact that this can have in society. Great. What countries, Fabrizio, have robust regulatory frameworks as far as transfer technology? We did this, and we did, I don't know, 8 to 10 countries, and but The most representative ones, I think, would be Brazil, Mexico, Uruguay, Colombia, and the United States that we saw. They have specific things about technology transfer, specific rules, and they have and promoting incentives. In the case of Brazil, for example, they have an innovation act and the EDM law, when it has to do with investment exemptions, and that really was helpful to create this interaction or this facility with the technology transfer offices, and that the link company academia is an easy one. There is no red tape, and this really helped articulate better public policies. Another important, interesting case is the case of Mexico. And they have a national network of technology transfer offices that pretty much create the OTTs, and they are linked to every one of the universities and each of the companies. Another example is Uruguay, and then they have the national ANI office, and that set up all of these things at a national level, and all of these things, future developments that may take place. In the case of Colombia, we are working a lot with the ecosystem for innovation and technology, and also you favor the collaboration between the public, private sector, and the academia. Now, when a paradigm case of what would be the regulation, we have the case of the United States, but I don't know if you know, they have the famous DADO Act from 1980, and this law is assign universities and investigation centers ownership for the research made with public funds so that they may request patents under their name and so that they can grant licenses and commercialize. This law created or changed the system of technology transfer in the United States so that they could definitely work with universities. And we just heard Victoria this morning saying that in the case of our investigations and our research in Argentina with public fund, the owner says this is a university, and no matter the funds that they were using, and it gives the possibility and the fact that it can manage the ownership of the university and any other innovation study. It really helps to commercialize these results, and of course, to create legal security. Also, they coordinate public policies and they provide fiscal incentives to conduct a effective transfer of what would be the academia towards the private sector.
Gracias. Y Jean
Thank you. And Giancarlo, what role play international treaties like the Nagoya Protocol or the new OMBU Treaty? Before I answer the question, it's important to understand if treaties are a positive or negative tool in the region, because we know in some cases there are treaties we are part of, but they don't have a positive impact in our countries. I think this is the first thing that we have to say. We know that international treaties are very important when they have a purpose or a goal that is known, that establishes legal security, and it's a way to recognize and protect the traditional knowledge in our region. And so treaties are important, of course, they are APIC, except from some countries such as Argentina, Paraguay, Bolivia, Venezuela, and Haiti who have not ratified it. Most of the countries in terms of PCT have ratified it, so we believe that within this region, except from these countries, it would be good that they do it so that we have a harmonization of the norm. And we have the Nagoya Treaty, which is a treaty there is no problem with. All the countries ratified it in the region, which will allow us to protect access to genetic resources. This is linked to protection of genetic resources, and the last treaty of OMPI about protection of genetic resources, except from Malawi. They haven't ratified it. It's an interesting treaty, and what we can generate with this treaty in different countries, especially in our region, so that we can have this coordination and regulations, which is the base of this study. We will see norms that do not talk between each other, countries that have different positions in the same topics. The treaty, what will allow us is to have a mother regulation that allows us to go in the same direction. I just want to say that this study that we made, this information about the international treaties will be an important input for the Commission of International Treaties of ASIPI so that they can see which ones are the treaties that we need, the treaties that are there but are not so important, but also genetic resources as countries in the south. So we need to promote this and we need to open the debate and propose some kind of policies and why we have to ratify it. But we will come back to this later on. In the case of regional challenges, what are the main challenges faced by the countries members of ASIPI in terms of technology transfer? Well, can you repeat? What are the main challenges faced by the countries member of ASIPI in terms of technological transfer? Okay, well, the first big challenge that we have is the lack of coordination between the different sectors. On the one hand, we have the academia. On the other hand, we have private sector, and then we have public sector. And what you do, I don't know, or I don't trust. The big problem that we discuss is that many researchers don't believe in intellectual property. We have to convince them, change their mindset, and tell them why it is important to protect the results. Not not long ago, I talked to someone and said, "Knowledge is free. You don't need to take ownership of knowledge. It has to be available for everyone." I don't agree with the patent system because it privatizes knowledge. So you speak to them, you say that with advantages and disadvantages, the patent system is what works. So the fact that somebody has ownership, it helps to have innovation and that they can be exploited better. And the companies, how sure they are that the results of the university are correct and validated, or I distrust some universities because they have some ideological bias, so there is no trust. And of course, the political system, the states, sometimes they don't coordinate. There are no laws, regulations that help to have these coordinations. And this coordination between these three legs of the chair is fundamental, and it's something that has to happen in each country. From the legal point of view, institutional point of view, what are the challenges? Well, we said in the previous questions, the main complicated point is the regulations that overlap, legal gaps that are there. Some countries that Fabrizio mentioned, they have robust regulations, well coordinated. There's no problem there. But in other countries that have sectoral regulations, regulations that don't talk to each other, this is a big problem that we may have. And the second thing, and this happens to most of the countries, is that their authorities are related to the topic and they are not financially independent. They are always under the control of the state. There is some intervention that sometimes does not allow that they do their job technically, and this is very complicated. And then in terms of the budget, the authorities is complex, and also the level of turnover that we see in the region in terms of the competent authorities. Something I didn't mention, the lack of funding is something that plays against researchers don't have incentives. There's more that we can do as institutions, and sometimes the information is not systematized. We don't really know what they're doing. And sometimes there are public calls, and so the institutions that fund these projects, well, there is a disconnection, and we don't know what institution, every institution does. So this lack of information, researchers are not well remunerated, and in some countries even it's not well seen. If I don't join a company, I won't earn enough money. So this is an issue, because these researchers, they tell them to work full time and that they don't have other projects with private firms, but sometimes this is not enough, and researchers end up resigning to the universities, and they join companies, and they become part of this content. Yeah, and Giancarlo, in terms of what we were discussing about challenges at legal and institutional level, what is the role that ASIPI could play in this situation? I think that something that the association has been promoting for some years is the creation of committees that have do research, sampling, collect information. So what would be the role of a CP? I think it's super important. In different visits that we made to Peru with Luis and Julie, we saw that the authorities like a CP, they see it as an association that is independent, autonomous, and their goal is simply to transfer knowledge with to all of you that are experts in your countries, and to offer to these authorities this type of trainings. I think it's a powerful tool that allows us to be a step ahead. So ASIPI has a very important role at this time. I think it's something that we need to train public officials, entities that will make decisions one day in legal aspects, and or maybe for treaties as well, because sometimes we start to negotiate treaties and some people don't have knowledge about what they are going to sign. So I think that the role of a CP right now is key to transmit knowledge, especially if the people it comes from are impartial and objective. And then right now, this is something difficult to get and something very important. A CP can articulate the authorities from public sector, private sector, especially in Peru, to get that universities have more ambition, like in the US, to generate their own research centers, understand that this type of practices have an impact in the country, and not only from the economic point of view, but also social point of view, which is very important. And this generates that perhaps in a short time, the countries, they have a public policy of technology transfer. And Fabrizio, how do you see the future of technology transfer in Latin America? I would say that we see it with optimism and caution as well. We need to institutionalize technology transfer. It shouldn't be something marginal, something that is there, but we really don't know what it's for. And obviously, if we have a strong legal framework, incentives, if we have investment, if we create capacities, technical capacities, obviously the potential is huge for the region. It is said that the American region has a huge potential in terms of technology transfer, but the problem is the institutions. It's a problem that we share in the region and in Latin America. And obviously, ASIPI can help with that. Especially that there is a shared vision, that it's a priority that we create commissions, ad hoc commissions that monitor technology transfer. In ASIPI Academia, we want to launch a course on technology transfer with the University of Los Andes. This is for managers, but we also want lawyers and ASIPI members participate, and that they see what we have in the region. ASIPI can also support the countries that are less developed with trainings, with some type of visits, suggest some model regulations. There is a lot of work that we can do from the patent committee, the committee of vegetal varieties. We can articulate the work. We are not giving the importance that it deserves. Intellectual property, there is no problem with that, but intellectual property, when it's well managed, is knowledge that can be commercialized and protected, and everything that this generates. And basically, we can look at transfer not only as a final phase, but a cross-cutting process that goes from research to commercialization. Very interesting. What is the final message that you would like to give in this presentation, both of you? Well, I think that the message that we want to give here is that technology transfer is not a luxury. It's something necessary for the development of the country, of the region. As I said, intellectual property that is well managed can help that all these ideas and projects can be transferred. They can become products that can be protected, successful products that can be commercialized, and that they are not left in the air because there were no funds to apply for the patent in the country or outside. The application was presented, nobody pays the yearly fee, there is no technology transfer, so there are things that need to be improved, and I think that this report can help and serve as a roadmap about what the countries can do in terms of public policy, and also from the institution organizations, what can we contribute with ASIPI, OMBI, they have a good program. What can we do to improve? And especially, I think we have to have intersectoral work between all the actors. We are not islands. And as ASIPI, as academia, and our universities as a private sector, well, let's work together because we see that this benefits the country and eventually the region. Well, I would think that the message to close would be that most of the information that we have collected, there's a lack of communication in every country with the authorities, and I think that ASIPI could take that role of coordination with the authorities of every country, members of ASIPI, to give information because maybe they don't have the information. We have to generate this communication, sit on a table and say there is this information, these are the objectives, this is the goal, the positive effects that technology transfer have. And in many countries we have found information and they would say, I have a contract, how can I enforce it? What are the regulations in the countries? This report, this survey, it's a starting point. This will allow to ASIPI and member countries to have a picture of the moment and start with this to try to talk to the authorities and explain the importance, what are the regulations that we have, that the regulations that we could have, and we could learn from a neighboring country. I would like Peru to copy what Mexico is doing and adapting it to every country. But it is important to know what they are doing in other places. It's not necessary to invent gunpowder. We need to understand that things are there, that we can apply them for the common good. We are in a moment. I don't want to sound exaggerated. It's a historical moment because many of our countries, through ASIPI, we can create a public policy for technology transfer. This would be ideal. We are coming to that, yes. I went backwards instead of forward. Well, Since this is the last panel, and some of you, well, we have a present for you. I want to clarify that this is not for Fe y Alegría, for donations. Don't worry about that. For those people who have already donated, you can get your cameras, and we want to present the book about technology transfer. This book has not been officially presented, but you will see the first ones to see it. This is the gift that we want to give you, and we simply wanted to show you some important points of the book so that you have an idea, and later on in your homes you can analyze the different points. So we will leave the QR code on the screen. This will direct you to the ASIPI library, where you will be able to download the book on technology transfer, and I want you to join us so that we can see the chapters, some important points, and especially thank the people who collaborated with this book. And so we'll keep it here for a while, and then the IT people can give us the book. I want to say that this book is a huge work that we did, thanks to Julie and the people in charge of publications in ASIPI. It was ready in a week, I think. We said this book has to be ready quickly. It's very nice to speak, but if we cannot have something that we can show during the seminar what we have done, well, everything is going to be up in the air. Before starting with the presentation of the book, I remember when we got the email from Fabrizio to the committee asking for information, and I opened the link and I took time because when I read it, there was information that I wondered, where am I? And I would think that in our countries, Peru has good state platforms to find information. We have a speak to find state regulations. With Gonzalo, we are trying to get information. We met twice, and we had to go to Stephanie Soto. She knows a lot about it, but we realized that the information was scattered, and I thought, well, Fabrizio went to Lima with Julie and Luis, and I was embarrassed because I had not sent the information. I apologize because the information was complex. I took a week. Since you have touched on that, the Paraguay questionnaire, it took time to complete it. It's 30 pages, but obviously this meant that I and other people had to resort to their universities, innovation centers, to see if there is a technology transfer office. It's not something that we see as intellectual property lawyers, except if we work with universities. And these lessons learned in ASIPI, we try to do it together. We were surprised. There were some delegates that we had to send a second or third email, but most of them answered, and they answered really well. So I want to say that we are very happy that in ASIPI we found this collaboration spirit. The working group, the delegates in the commission, and also the executive committee that allowed us to translate this into something tangible, which is what we want to show you. We can show the book. First of all, the cover, there were 6 options. We chose the most representative in general terms in Latin America, and And in this study, 22 countries participated. We had most of the region except from Panama. So the representation numbers is important because we have all the countries with all the answers. So that helped. I will just go through the book so that you see it. Here we are thanking Luis for the introduction and collaboration so that we can present something that we prepared ourselves, something within the association. And the summary, I just want to mention some of the points for you to have an idea about how the work took place. We started with the legal part. During the conference, we heard about transfer technology, but if you want to go into the legal details, please read these. We also talk about incentives. We talked about institutions in different countries, the structure, regulations, successful mechanisms for technology transfer, the leading sectors in technology innovation strategies to overcome, and exemplary cases, opportunities for ASIPI conclusion, and acknowledgement. When we talk about the legal framework, I won't read, but we have identified three types of legal frameworks. Countries who have a robust framework with special laws, US, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Bolivia, Cuba, Venezuela. They have policies for technology transfer. The other countries, they have sectoral regulations, intellectual property, laws on incentives, others on regulation, others on investment. But we found something interesting, for example, El Salvador in terms of this, and we had countries that only have the intellectual property regulations, such as Panama, Chile, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Belize, and Honduras. Then we analyzed in terms of international treaties, what do we have and what have all the countries signed. We have 100% PCT, unfortunately, Paraguay, Argentina, Bolivia, Venezuela, and Haiti. These are countries that are not in this treaty. We should promote public policies or create the need to be a part of these treaties. And in other agreements, the Nagoya Protocol regarding genetic resources, previous access, and Paraguay, Chile, and the U.S., I think, and the Biodiversity Convention of 1991, some countries ratified, and other treaties, regional treaties in Mercosur, Andean Community, and some clauses on technology transfer. So we have something interesting. These are some conclusions and traditional knowledge. Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Dominican Republic, they have special regulations for that. The trend is that every country has a sui generis protection of traditional knowledge, and obviously this is linked to what Giancarlo mentioned, OP Treaty on Genetic Resources and traditional knowledge. A country ratified, Malawi. Other countries promised to sign, Peru, US, etc. And then key institutions in the countries. In some countries, there's more than one entity. Others have institutes of technology transfer, innovation. In some countries, we have Ministry of Science and Technology. In others, we have a technological park in Paraguay. In Uruguay, we have Innovation Agency, technological parks, an endless number of institutes statutes that help. In economic incentives, well, some countries have it well developed. The case of Brazil, others more or less, others don't have it. And here I want to show a comparison table where we grouped the countries with a regulatory framework. What is the key institution and the fiscal incentives, economic incentives? We have Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, El Salvador, US, Guatemala, Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, DR, Uruguay, and Venezuela. So this gives us a general view of how we're doing. Successful mechanisms of technology transfer, licensing and patents. We all know that strategic alliances, joint ventures, university spin-offs, which is something that in our country is what we need to have and we need to promote. We should have this coordination with ASIPI, the buying and selling of technology, collaboration, academia, business or company, implementation of mechanisms, importance of successful mechanisms, leader sectors in technological innovation. This shows the industries of the countries, industry in biotechnology, renewable energies, pharmaceutical, healthcare technology, telecommunication, TICs, challenges for leading sectors, the importance of leading sectors. Then regional challenges of technological transfer, the bureaucratic barriers, regulatory barriers, which is something that in our countries we find it in our regulations, insufficient protection for intellectual property, lack of economic incentives, which is very important in this type of technological transfer, lack of technological infrastructure, scarcity of specialized staff. Universities will play an important role to fulfill all these needs, cultural resistance to change, which is very complicated, and the importance of regional challenges. Then we talked about the strategies to overcome challenges. This has to do with regulatory frameworks, and at international level, there is a regulatory framework for technology transfer, such as the Andean Community for registration of contracts, but it's quite scattered. The strengthening of protection of intellectual property.
This is also very important, and of course, so all the IP offices should provide sufficient or relevance to this as is deserved. Obviously, the issue of incentives, which is also one of the grave problems, that there's always, of course, a lack of money, and even more so when we speak of innovation, and you have to really contribute to other areas. But innovation is quite important, and there's obviously a lack of investment in technological infrastructure, specialized skilled human capital. So awareness about cultural change, and obviously the importance and strategies to overcome challenges. And to start wrapping up, lessons learned that weren't that we were filling out by those responsible in every one of the countries. We just highlight the most important thing in the case of the United States, MIT, technology transfer, medical technology transfer in Uruguay, everything pertaining agro-industry, Brazil, aerospatial and energy development in El Salvador, initiatives for renewable energy, digital technology, Chile, institutional support for technologies, Ecuador, ecosystems for innovation, Mexico, implementation of intelligent software, Dominican Republic, good practices in the public and private coordination, Cuba, everything pertaining biopharmaceuticals, and of course the importance of these cases. Future perspectives and opportunities for ASIPI, we have strengthening for regional networks, which I think it's one of the major strengths that we currently have with the association. Implementation of comprehensive public policies. We definitely are the ones that have to push this forward and be that agency promoting or coordination, specialized capacity building, skill training. We have enough specialized professionals to share knowledge, to learn, to acquire more knowledge, promotion of open innovation, adaptation, emerging technologies, importance and perspectives and opportunities. Obviously, the conclusions that many have already reached and we've given to you to reach. To read, I'm sorry. It's basically the important thing of what we wanted to share with you today is I just want to thank all of these people that have been such an important part of and have collaborated in this. People from ASIPI, experts, the different members requested our organization. So I just want to mention in Argentina, Maria Soledad Alvarez, in Belize, Oneida Flores, Bolivia, Marta Landívar, Brazil, Andrea Pociñas, Chile, Manuel Vernet, Colombia, Juan Felipe Acosta, Laura Valverde, Costa Rica, Janet Soto, Cuba, Emilia Molan Martinez, Cuba, Moral Martinez, Ecuador, José Roberto Romero, El Salvador, Susana Navarro, El Salvador, Samuel Baña, United States, Cristina Umaña, she's an active collaborator from Guatemala, Gabriela Gandra, Guatemala, Nacional Esperanza, Haiti, Blanca Mejia, Honduras, Juan José Méndez Cortez in Mexico, Julian José Vendaña, Nicaragua, Moises Rivera, Panama, and in my case for Paraguay, Jean-Carlo for Peru, Erlin Castillo for Dominican Republic, Selena Vina, Uruguay, and of course Enrique Chung. I'd like to introduce our work group. Just wanted to mention that this particular commission was created as a special commission, as a group for basically hoping to coordinate universities with the CP. Of course, we started to suggest more work areas, of course. And here I'd like to introduce my team. And the secretary, Antonio Martinez, unfortunately wasn't able to be here today. But we have Giancarlo for Peru, Cristina Omaña for Guatemala, Giancarlo Juan Felipe Acosta, Colombia, Soledad Alvarez, Argentina, Silvina Dila, Uruguay, Marta Benet, Chile, and Daniel Bien, Mexico. Here, I know we mentioned the famous questionnaire, and I just wanted to show you it's not too complex, or so it would seem. And so we ask questions about a regulatory framework, so people can answer yes or no, and anything else. What are responsible organizations? If there are any international agreements, regional treaties, which apply, which don't apply. And then we spoke about IP protection and technology transfer. We cited maybe some mandatory regulation, and then practices and processes for technology transfer. What are the main sources of technology? That, of course, are establishing what are the industrial sectors. When you read the book, you'll realize which book takes place in which sector, which one's loose, which one is stronger, how can to promote collaboration between organizations, investigation, research centers, what are the technology transfers that are most used, how do you promote collaboration between universities, are any public policies, what are the obstacles and challenges that were identified, what were the success stories, experiences, what can you tell about technology and digitalization, and some sort of evaluation and recommendation. And so I just think that this is a questionnaire to be answered in a month. Just kidding. In case you did answer it. And of course, if you want to see what every country answered in a country per country, then we ask that you please access this page within the PDF, and then you can enter here, click in here, see your country, and then have access to each and every one of the questions, obviously with each of the answers. Thank you so much, Fabrizio. Before moving along to the Q&A session, I just wanted to ask you what should be the first step that every government should take before going ahead and implementing. Thank you, Giselle. As I mentioned, I think that we really have to institutionalize technology transfer. Yes, and this doesn't only mean to create an office, but also to have personnel, to give them sufficient structure, sufficient funds, make sure that universities realize the importance of actually having technology transfer office. And something very important that was mentioned in several panels is to really establish, as far as policies, who will be in charge of what wants to be done. really have incentives for collaborators, have them know that to patent this is very important, and how to, because sometimes investigators finish something and they want to publish, and and maybe that publication is going to kill the novelty of the patent. So first the patent and then you publish. Also, there's some agile mechanisms for negotiation of licensing contracts. And I just want to mention that without institutionality, there can be no continuity, scale, nor impact. Great. Giancarlo, also from the study that you conducted, were you able to identify any of the countries that were, I don't know, farther along the way, or like could be like the model case study for the rest of America? I think that the first one is United States, and I think is evident because of how this tool is used from other universities. And then Mexico. Mexico, of course, also has a very important, a very relevant legal structure, and that is exactly what Fabrizio was saying. It is important that one is able to patent, speak of technology transfer, and have, clear rules of the game, have a clean regulation, and that is going to generate a natural incentive. Obviously, fiscal incentives are incredibly important, as are universities, which are the creators per excellence of these technologies. But I do believe that that's most important here, like for Mexico, is to have a structure that's clear, that a professional network that are trained, that hope to promote these type of practices. And as Fabrizio mentioned, the issue of contracts and technology isn't a luxury. This is a necessity, that when we have to find a way so that our countries understand that that is the best thing they could ever do. Sorry, and also mentioning the issue of Brazil, they not only have a law on innovation, but they also have a law on incentives for businesses. And how does this help us have a great collaborative structure? So clear rules, everybody happy. Unclear rules, that's where the lawyers get called in. Yes, and also we wanted to open up the Q&A session to see if anybody wanted to ask anything for you to Fabrizio or again. We have half an hour, so I mean, take your time. Thank you. Yes, technology transfer for me has always been a bit of a myth, so to speak, in real life. I understand what it is, how it happens internally when you have, government, universities, government issues grants to universities, universities develop, and then universities eventually can license these developments, and then government eventually doesn't have ownership but has what the Americans have, marching rights. So if they actually want to exploit the patent. That part for me is clear. You have the academic side of things, capital. So, yeah, all of that. Now, technology transfer. You always mention transfer, and this is something that I've discussed with Giselle, technology transfer. Anytime there are international treaties, they want to somehow expedite foreign patents in our country, and to bring in the technology to promote tech transfer. I've always been a lot in the other side. Of the companies that transfer the technologies, and transfer technology doesn't mean transfer knowledge or know-how. It's just you're transferring something that is very limited, and all the know-how obviously remains with the foreign, and the type of invention that takes place and that somehow is linked to this technology transfer grant belongs to the company, to the foreign company. And so my question is, how real is the technology transfer towards to the promotion of development of local industry, local invention, considering that the rights that are going to be born from that relationship will go back abroad, no matter where they were born. Right. Okay. This is a technology transfer because there isn't really a full dissemination on how to arrive at that development. And so a patent in this case, when okay, the most information is know-how, and obviously they don't tell you what to do or everything you need to do. So I'm listening to some debates, and a patent law should be modified to explain the best way to arrive at that result. And as a matter of fact, the when you present a patent request, you have to figure out the best way to arrive at the result. Well, in the United States, we see that sometimes you hide some things and say others and don't say others. And on the other hand, it can be a sort of way out as a normative change to really make sure that the the technology transfer is full. I heard in one of the panels that it's a shame that our countries patent or have more patent requests from foreigners than from nationals. Obviously, the whole patent thing is indicative of the innovation in the country, but the more foreign patents we have, the more technology transfer there is. Or it could mean that there are contracts, licensing to exploit patents, knowledge transfer. Of course, the problem with this is that what happens when all that knowledge isn't said and you're not share, it isn't shared. So there could be some sort of a mechanism. And the issue of funding and everything pertaining COVID, and the vaccination. It tells you what it does, but not how to arrive. And so we see some mechanisms, and this technology transfer should be total, and it shouldn't be a problem. Sure, we want more technology, and we have international patents. That's also going to help to ensure that there is a greater technology transfer for the country. This is going to sound a little bit romantic, but I think this is a period of knowledge. When you talk about the tiger of Asia, and I know that a lot of us actually consume that type of technology, and we don't get that much information. And when we generate a hub for transfer technology, sure, it's romantic and it's about searching for things, but like Fabrizio said, it is a change in regulation, and this is an asset, and maybe what we want is monetization. So I do firmly believe that dreaming isn't expensive and isn't hard, and you have to generate the right regulations, and we have to contribute to the academia and generate that. We have to make sure that the region becomes a technology hub. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm very happy about this. From the WIPO, it's really interesting to see this in Latin America. There are, however, certain research on innovation for countries from the WIPO and the organization that takes care of country organizations. So doing Control F, pressing Control F to the to the paper. I know that you are IP attorneys, and from my side of things, as technology transfer, there are some other elements missing, but I think that it is completely understandable. And on the other side, this is actually and it's not only about universities or managers. You're missing all of the collaboration network. I'm making my commercial for the CATIS, and that working with intellectual property rights from the WIPO, we are managing and supporting certain countries to generate or to support innovation laws like Panama and Costa Rica. And I just think that this could be one where you analyze the publication the way you used to do it with there's comparative studies for the laws, but I believe there's also national development plans. Things like Brazil and Mexico have their pillars, and measures to make sure that Mexico have a superconductor hub and it connected LIMPI and the Secretariat of Science and Technology, the Technology Transfer Network, and I bring this study to this research to the WIPO and to also generate support programs and connection through you with ASIPI. We are very much aware of the fact that the study maybe doesn't have the expansion we would have wanted. The greatest obstacle is that we, um, dealt with people who we knew not necessary technology transfer. That's why we took some time. And we agree that this, of course, can complement each other. And so this type of collaboration, basically, it's institutional one, is the ones that we want to have on our own, the point of view of intellectual property attorneys, have our own vision. But of course, there are so many things that we would have liked to go into greater depth in. And delegates maybe would not answer our questionnaire necessarily. So should be improved, and I'm sure there will be a second and even a third version, but it's a starting point to begin the debate going, at least in ASIPI. I think it meets its goal. So yes, as a matter of fact, it's very lucky that you're here and that you're outside OMP and the WIPO, and that study is a starting point, as Fabrizio mentioned, in the table. As you pointed out for the copies, that's how it needs to be done. So we need to be capable of sitting all the officials in the table and everybody involved in this issue and begin. And as I mentioned to Ricky just now, romantically to dream that the region can generate the necessary technology. And so this can be very complex. Sitting on a table is very complex. And so what we have in an association is generating what we want. And what this study, the research allows us to do is what we're doing in Mexico, Brazil. And so the important thing is the copies. And I would ask to commit the WIPOs for them to read our work and help us review, send their comments. I want to congratulate Aldo and Giancarlo for the work that they did to achieve this publication and this presentation. And as Aldo said, you give a task. If you assign him something, he ends up doing three other things. And so this is what we have now. In December, we're going to have another publication, with the role of the universities for the development of intellectual property. And thank you so very much. 6 months left to continue, just publishing documents, and we will continue to insist. And we'll see what we can do in 6 months. I don't know if there's any other questions. Thank you to both of our presenters and for everything they've done.